All right, how we doing tonight, everybody?
All right, hello.
All right, please welcome our esteemed guest tonight, writer, director, hometown boy made good, Richard Linklater tonight.
H-Town. Good to be with you guys.
My name is Bun B. I am happy to be having this conversation tonight.
It's an honor for me.
Looking back at this film, Richard, it's got to feel kind of meta to take a nostalgic look at a film that's kind of based in nostalgia, yeah?
Yeah, the film itself, I realized more years when we shot that in summer of '92, it had been 16 years since the date it takes place. So now, 25 years since, and we showed at an outdoor screening a few years back. It was kind of a crappy print, scratches, and I was looking at it going, oh, it's starting, the time is starting to blur. Like if enough time goes by, people will think the film was actually shot in 1976 because it gets blurry. So we're getting there. I think another 10 years, no one will know this was a period film to begin with. It was shot in '76. Of course, I was 15 years old. Hollywood gave me a little money to make a movie, but it was the '70s,
How do you think it holds up 25 years later?
I think there's something.
Is it holding up better than you 25 years later?
About the same, maybe. I don't know. I think it must be. I mean, people still talking about it. People still referencing it. I think it just goes down in the books as one of those high school movies that, people are looking for connection. When everybody went to high school, everybody knows somebody kind of like this, or, there's such a commonality to all of us as Americans, just growing up so I think it hit some chords there, and it's funny, and, you can kind of, over the years, I've gotten weird fan mail about the movie, and my favorite one, I have to say, is this guy who said he had been in an accident and had some brain damage, and he had no memory of his past, but he was thanking me because the movie is now his past. Like, it reminds him of, I was like, oh, we're serving a purpose.
That's amazing.
Yeah, like that was he was kind of thanking me because he imagines that's what his high school was like.
So I guess it's safe to assume that music was a big part of your life because it plays such a big part of your films.
Oh yeah, especially, when I set out to write this, it had been a while, I'd been out of high school, I'd put that away, but I started thinking like, oh, I want to tell a high school. I'd made a couple films at that point. I was like, I have a high school movie in me. And what I did was just go buy all those CDs, so all the music I remembered, because I hadn't really listened to much of it in years, so I just had the music on the whole time. Because, music's such it puts you at a time and a place. So that's really, I think as a teenager, music, it's all about you're kind of oppressed in your environment. Music to me, looking back, was like, that was probably the most expressive element of my life.
Right.
As a teenager was music. The cliche is alienated teenager, walk through their house, don't talk to your parents, shut the door and crank up the music. That's all of us. And that was kind of expressing everything you feel at a certain time.
And you think that's the commonality in people's life is these moments that are tied into music and maybe moments of defiance, right? Like, or when you're trying to form your identity.
Romance, defiance, anger. It's expressing what you can't articulate yet.
Right.
You hope to someday if you're, an artist or an expressive person, but you probably don't quite, or you're getting there, but they're ahead of you. They've already lived it. They've already, I remember thinking, this music was so deep, it was so meaningful, but, it's you projecting a lot of emotion onto it.
And how many of these songs, when you look back, how many of them did you realize, like, when I make this movie, this song has to be in this film, and this song has to be in this particular scene?
It runs the gamut, but I would say a percentage of them are in the script.
Right.
I'll say this song right here, it's in the script. And then others, you sort of feel your way through. And then some happy accidents, some you can't get the rights to.
Right.
You can't, they won't. There were several songs I couldn't get, and it runs the gamut. But the fun part, I think, is in post-production. I've shot the movie, and I'm still mixing and matching in some songs. And, it's so fun when you're creating something like this, because, it's just the jukebox in your mind. I was, looking at Sweet Emotion for the very beginning, I was in pre-production, but I didn't really have an opening credit song in the script yet. I was thinking, I wasn't even sure of my opening credit sequence. I was still thinking about it. But I was getting some dental surgery, and I asked him to like tweak up the nitrous oxide a little bit, just a little extra, please. And sure enough, the little jukebox, I could hear that first little boom, 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 that percolating beginning, and I just saw this dark screen, some credits start. And I was like, there it was. It just was a little marriage in my head. So I was like, okay, Sweet Emotion, we'll try to get that song to kick it off. So it comes from everywhere.
So we see a lot of the songs that did make it into the movie. Is there one song that you really wanted, say for Dazed and Confused, that you felt would have been perfect for a certain scene, and you just, because I'm an artist, I know about dealing with licensing. Every now and then we want to sample a song, and I have an idea of, the theme of the album and what I want to do, and I feel like if I do this song, which, encompasses a part of this particular track, that it'll really set the tone.
Yeah, you need it.
And it's frustrating when you find out that you can't just use any music you want to.
Yeah, and it's often the artists themselves will be like, Steven Tyler, I met him somewhere after this, and he's like, hey man, sorry, because I was trying to clear for the very end, where there's a Leonard Skinner song, Tuesday Gone, at the end of the Moon Tower sequence. For a long time I had the Aerosmith song Dream On in there, but he apologized. I was like, we lost the rights to that music, and the manager back then's a real asshole, so he wouldn't give us the song, but he apologized about it. But we got the one for the beginning, but not the end. But it was okay, the song that goes in there. I think my biggest disappointment, the very closing credits, but now it's fine,
Right.
With the very closing credits, I had Led Zeppelin's Rock and Roll, Been a long time since I rock and roll. That was in there. And at that time, the guys weren't really getting along. Like Jimmy Page said yes, but Robert Plant said no, and they weren't, so I had this, they said no, but I was like, okay, we got a deep bench, I'll put in Slow Ride, and that'll work too. So, you got it. There was a lot to choose from. But Zeppelin came back. 10 years later, I did that movie School of Rock, and they gave us Immigrant Song, Jack Black. We had our own little, so you do this long enough, you get these little returns. These little things come full.
The guys realized, I had a situation where I had a song produced by someone, and I was trying to explain what we wanted the album to be like, and it was an independent album, so it wasn't in a major system, so we didn't have a really big budget, and he was like, I just don't see it. I just don't see the vision. I don't see the really point of me incorporating my sound into this. And then years later, they come back and like, man, I had no idea what you guys were really trying to do. And it's like, whatever you need from here on out, you can use it,
Yeah, but you see, you got to trust me at the time.
Exactly.
They didn't trust you. I thought ZZ Top was so crucial to this movie, Houston band, and so much of this, the whole idea for this movie came from a ZZ Top song. But they're a Houston-based band, but their publishing was in Austin, so I went to the office and talked to the guy.
Oh, nice.
I just sat in his office and said, okay, I can't make this movie without, I explained the whole, this whole movie is based on a night I had riding around in a friend's car in LaPorte, Texas. LaPorte. Nice. We were in Mark DiSclafani's 68 Le Mans, and we were ZZ Top Fandango, that album. It's less than 40 minutes, not a very long album.
Right.
But it was an 8-track. And I think we had that in all night. We listened to it, 9 times. It just kind of
over and over and over.
Yeah, it just kept, it changed tracks and we drove around, and we never left the area, but at the end of the night we had driven 138 miles. And we had, flirted with girls, busted some mailboxes, just everything.
Just a typical night in LaPorte,
yeah, just another night as a freshman in high school or whatever, with some older guys, ne'er-do-wells. And so that was, when I first thought of this movie, I thought, the whole movie will take place in the car. And that'll be, but I expanded it, of course. But that was, you gotta have a first oomph with nothing happening, but everything happening. Riding around looking for something, trying to be cool, looking for something that's happening, kind of finding it, kind of making it happen.
But do you think that bowling ball scene, that driving around scene, is that probably the purest moment you think in that movie?
Well, yeah, I was so
relates
happy
to you, right?
when I got those songs, I was like, yeah, so I think that is, in a way, that is the purest, distilled down essence of the movie.
Right.
4 guys in a car, driving around, listening to ZZ Top. That was that whole movie in one song. And yeah, that actually happened. My buddy, this is my senior year in high school here, my buddy, teammate, Danny Lamar had stolen a bowling ball from Bel Air Lanes or whatever, and he had it for like a week. He was just carrying it around, and we got in the car like, "What are you doing with that fucking bowling ball?" And so we were right near the Astrodome, just past on 610 near Stella Link, where I live, right off of there. Stella Link, yeah. And he rolled down the window and just threw it out. We were going about 50 miles an hour. I looked back, and it hit like some kind of curb thing and went about 40 feet in the air and into a neighborhood. I was like, holy shit. So we had to, okay, we got to do this. So we go back around, we drive back around and see where we were trying to find the ball or whatever. And it had gone through the windshield of a Cadillac.
Wow.
And we came running back, okay, we got to get the hell out of here before someone kills us. But, and you think of it, how you survive your teenage years. It's one thing to survive yourself, but it's another thing to not accidentally kill someone, too.
Yeah, with a bowling ball, no less.
With a bowling ball or whatever dumbass thing you're doing. So anyway, that really happened.
So
some version of it. Now I got Mitch, doing it. It's much more innocent in this movie.
So you go through all the processes of getting the music into the movie, and you decide to do another film that's very closely themed to what Dazed and Confused is, and that's Everybody Wants. So, do you learn lessons from dealing with licensing and getting music placed, or do you approach it differently based on things that occurred during Dazed and Confused?
Yeah,
or is it just more of the same?
All those years later, I said, well, that was my high school movie. I have my college movie, and that was Everybody Wants Some. To me, it's in a way, I'm like a better filmmaker. I knew a lot more, just experience, Right. So in a way, I go, oh, it's a different movie. Dazed was about, I guess, the oppression of high school, and I thought college to me was freedom. And by the early 80s, where it's set, the culture was very different. It was a really interesting cultural time. All these different, Dazed was kind of FM radio, Southern rock, and whatever was on the radio then. By college, it was a little more eclectic. It was all over the map. A lot of different genres, a lot of different. It was such an interesting time culturally. I wanted to show that. So the music was huge, but I was dealing with the music supervisor I'd worked with before, and they cleared the song. So I put out all the requests. Did I get everything I wanted? I got pretty much. Yeah. I think it helps to do it more in a reputation, like people want to be in the movie.
Right. At this point, now you're an acclaimed director.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and. The Dazed soundtrack album that everyone passed on. I mean, Universal dumped the album because they thought, this is a longer story, but the short version is they wanted me to get some modern bands to re-record some songs. And they weren't like cool modern bands. They were bands you hadn't even heard of. They were trying to break out. Oh, we'll do that and put the music. I was like, no, I don't. I need the original recordings. It said, and I just said no. And so they said, well, the album's never going to sell. And so they dumped it. And we couldn't find another label. I was going to everybody. When the movie was coming out, they thought they wouldn't be on the shelves by the time, so everybody passed on it. And it's like, it's somewhere between, I think it's pushing double platinum, the albums. Everybody, but anyway, all those bands that gave us their songs, Black Oak, Arkansas, all these people, they made a lot of money.
Oh, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, they did really well. So I noticed in subsequent, people were like, oh yeah, not that I've had that kind of success since. The soundtracks don't sell the way they used to.
No, and then a lot of soundtracks, I think, prior to that time period were usually one person would do kind of the whole album, right? Like they would do the whole soundtrack. This kind of opened up the door for, bringing in lesser known bands, and mixing them with bigger bands. And now you look at movie soundtracks, and a lot of them kind of carry a lot of the characteristics that yours did.
Yeah, it's a good, because I thought at that time, a lot of people hadn't gone back and collected that music from vinyl. Everybody had CDs at that time, so it was like, oh, it's a good one-stop shopping thing for like a 70s hits, But by the time once them came around, we did a double vinyl double vinyl came out on it. I was happy about that. But they kind of ruined soundtracks by overdoing it and putting songs that aren't even in the movie on soundtracks. I mean, I'm kind of a purist. Don't mess around with that. You started seeing songs inspired by the movie Speed, right? Or whatever. It's like, what? It's like they ruined the genre. They ruined the whole medium, I think. But Everybody Wants Some was fun, though. It was very similar, but I had learned a lot, and I can't really think of too many songs I didn't get that I wanted. There were maybe a few, but those songs, a lot of them are, I think some of them were a little less successful. I wasn't dealing with the Aerosmiths and the, Bob Dylan so much.
Did you feel like you hit every beat with the songs you put in the movies? Do you feel like everything kind of hit exactly like you wanted to? It brought the emotion out of it, right?
Yeah. It was about all those, they're at a punk club one night, they're dancing to Parliament, Funkadelic back at home, they're, it was just Cotton Eye Joe, country, because the urban cowboy country, all of them were on the table. It was obviously the early days, hip hop, Rapper's Delight sequence is very important to me because that was the newness of that.
Right.
That was real. So I wanted to. That song had been. I guess it had been parodied, and people had fun with that. But I don't think people truly. I wanted to go back to an originalist view of what it felt like in the day when that came out.
Yeah, you didn't want it to be like Bohemian Rhapsody and Wayne's World.
I wasn't making fun of anything. I was like, this was exciting and new and real, and I don't think anyone had any idea at the time that this new thing would. I think at the time, I've talked to rappers who thought, well, they thought it might be a fad for a year or two.
Right.
It was interesting to see it just become the art form, the great American art form.
How hard was it for the guys to learn that song and to get that scene down?
They didn't take me serious. Like the cast, I gave them all the music before. I said, okay, I want you to learn everything. And they said, all the lyrics, all 8 minutes or whatever. I'm like, yeah, learn it all. And they jumped in. They had fun with it.
So is there an extended version of that performance in the car with them doing more lyrics?
It went on a little bit longer, but no, I knew we couldn't do the whole thing. But that was fun. But yeah, I remember that very scene, similar to the ZZ Top story. I had that story riding around over here with a couple friends of mine, Julio Garcia. We were riding around. That song's on the radio. He's singing along. It's like passing the mic. It was just new. It was new. It's exciting.
When you're on set, are you playing songs from that era when you're making these movies? Because you're not playing a lot of the songs that are actually end up in the film at the time. But are you playing songs from that era to kind of create that vibe?
I wanted to permeate the production.
Right.
I give everybody the music, and I often tell the actors what they like and what they, because they don't know. They all kind of like everything. But I say, oh, your character wouldn't like
this song.
Or I tell them all, because they had to do a lot of disco dance lessons and stuff like that. Because they're like, what is this? I was like, it was fun, disco dance. I mean, you wouldn't admit to liking disco music, but you secretly did, But you wouldn't. That was an era like disco sucks, rock and roll. It was a real divide. But I think the disco really holds up. I like it. I like it.
I'm creating rooms like the Sound Machine and places like that where guys go to dance and learning those dances. Does that kind of bring you back to a certain place?
Yeah, we would do. Growing up, we'd have these parties on weekends. You'd watch Soul Train on Saturday afternoon, and then at the party, you'd kind of do some of those moves. Did
you have to give a tutorial and tell some guys, no, you top then bottom then top?
All I told them, I had a couple lady choreographers I was working with who were kind of my age, and they, we looked at a lot of stuff, and I was too embarrassed myself to do anything. All I told them was very sexual. Dancing was, think of it as sex. I told the guys and the girls, I was like, don't hold back. This was really, it was a raunchy time, the 70s and early 80s, pre-Reagan revolution. It was pretty raunchy, pretty, So, did you listen?
Oh, that's amazing. That's very different. My mic went dead on stage. But no, I was looking at some of the dance moves and seeing how natural these guys felt in their environment, and it's weird because you're using generally young people to kind of, you know, redo a time period that they're not really familiar with. How hard is it to get them acclimated to that kind of thing?
They look at it as like historical research. I show them all the same footage. A lot of them embarrassingly like, oh yeah, my parents did that. I'm realizing, oh shit, when I did Dazed, I was only, you know,
Yeah, you were
8
young
to 10 years. I wasn't that much older than the cast. Now I'm like, oh, okay, I could be your father. But they got into it. They got into it. They all kind of, it was somewhere along the way. Like I had mixed feelings about my teen years. I still do. I see Dazed has a lot of dark linings, you know. To me, it's kind of a tough time, you know. It wasn't a full scale endorsement of that era in my own life or just the teenage mindset. But I got into the college movement. I was like, oh, this was all fun. This was all great. You know, I really had a much different orientation to, I guess, that moment in my life. I think it had to do with the freedom of it and everything. But the guys picked up on that. You know, we talked about all the music, and you know, they got into it. Actors they're sponges.
Right.
They want everything. They want all the information. They want the history. They voted. They all approached me because I wasn't sure what the opening credit song was going to be. To everybody wants some, and they all came like, we want My Sharona.
Really?
Yeah. They insisted My Sharona. The beats, you know. Bum, 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 bum. Yeah. They kind of. I was like, okay, well it was one of several I was thinking of. But I was like,
was that music that was playing on set that they were kind of hearing?
Yeah. You know, that kind of. The Knack. They were talk about a raunchy band. If you really listen to the lyrics of every single Knack song, they are a teen angst sex band of all time. You know? They're sort of treated as a joke in a way, but I take them more serious. I thought they were underrated.
So you've done the 70s, you've done the 80s. Are we going to the 90s at some point?
Yeah, I have a later, almost considered, everybody wants some 70s. You know, like the 80s really didn't start till a little bit later.
Right.
You know, it doesn't.
Here we go again.
Just keep trying. What people think of the 80s didn't really kick in for a few years. So I have a mid-80s movie I've been working on for a while that maybe, it's a little more underground 80s music, be less, you know, weird stuff. But who knows? Yeah. It's probably a good, I don't know. Music's always an interesting part of whatever you're doing though, you know, so.
So what are you listening to now? Like what kind of music do you listen to now that engages you, kind of gets you interested, makes you want to write, just kind of gets you through the day now?
It's just all over the map, you know. I have a programmed jukebox on my thing that's, you know, thousands of songs, and I get inspired everywhere. You know, I go way back. I've been listening to a lot of music of the 30s and 40s, you know, Duke Ellington, early big band, you know. Yeah, no, I really love that sound, but everything, I don't know. It sounds so lame just to say I kind of want to be inspired by everything. You get a little older, I'm not on the cutting edge, you know, it's hard to have your ear to the ground going out to everything new. I have to hear from friends, you know, like, oh, you know, for months about someone before I'll, you know, go check something out, so. Being the old guy in the room now, it's not, you know, you're not on the cutting edge of everything, but I don't know, I like all music, you know, I would say a narrow band of all music, you know, so. That doesn't answer your question very well. What about you? I mean, you know, musicians love all music. Would you say that's?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we find music from everywhere. For me, because I do hip hop, when I'm, you know, not on the road and not, you know, around the music, I tend to listen to different music that kind of excites me and engages me. So I live my life inside the hip hop culture, but when it's just kind of me, I like a lot of like alternative music, you know, Dead Kennedys, a lot of early punk rock, stuff like that. Dead Kennedys, like Sex Pistols, that kind of stuff. Black Flag, you know. It gets my energy up, you know.
Did you guys see the opening night movie last night? Bathtubs Over Broadway. Who was at that? Did you notice? You haven't seen that yet, but Jello Biafra is in it. You could tell the audience members, the DK fans were like, "That's Jello Biafra." Yeah, 1984. I wandered into a Dead Kennedy show, changed my life. Yeah. I was a little late to the new wave punk thing, but when it did, it hit hard, you know. Butthole Surfers, big Austin band, you know. I used to project movies for them, so Sonic Youth. So, yeah, the '80s were great. The underground '80s punk was good, and worldwide, you know. And Everybody Wants Some. I have Stiff Little Fingers, Alternative Ulster. You know, I don't know. It's always an exciting time in music. Now there's just so much coming from so many directions. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, we've got some good music we're going to play in here tonight. If you guys want to hear some good music tonight, we're going to have a band come out by the name of Handsome Beast. We're going to play some clips from a couple of your films, and they're going to perform the music, if that's all right. Everybody give a nice round of applause to our guest tonight, Richard Linklater.